Who is Rise Against? The band Rise Against originated in Chicago, Illinois in 1999, and their original name at first was Transistor Revolt, but they never did any live shows with this very first lineup. In the first band, there are Tim McClark, vocals, Joe Prince, bass and vocals, Tony Tintari, drums, and Mr. Procession, guitar and vocals. In the years of 2000 and 2001, two band members left, which was Tony and Mr. Procession. They were replaced by Brandon Barnes, drummer, and Todd Mahoney, guitar and vocals. 2001 is a big year, which is when the band is renamed to Rise Against, and they are signed to their very first label, Fat Records. Then within the same year of 2001, the band Rise Against comes out with their very first album, The Unraveling, which led to the band touring for a year or so, trying to have the world be able to listen to their very first album, still on the same label of Fat Records. After touring for a bit of support on their album, The Unraveling, they went right back into the studio to make a new album called Revolutions Per Minute. After these two albums is when Rise Against begins touring massively to gain support for their newly made albums in the time of 2002. Their touring went well as they played in the 2003 Warped Tour, which is a great place for beginning bands to become discovered and signed off to a popular label or company. This is all coming according to plan to expose their new albums. Now, in 2003, Rise Against gets signed from DreamWorks Records, and they started on recording their third album, Siren Song of Counterculture. DreamWorks Records changed their name to Universal Music Group, and Rise Against was put into Geffen Records, a subsidiary of the label. Shortly after this, Todd Mahoney left the band and was replaced by Chris Chassis, guitarist. August 2004 is when Rise Against releases their third album called The Siren Song of Counterculture in Geffen Records. This album in particular is one of the albums that cracked the Billboard for 200 Best Albums. After touring from their newly made album, they go back into the studio to record their very fourth album called Suffer and the Witness. They were able to release this album by July 2006. This is the album for them that peaked over the top 10 albums in the 200 Billboard, which has led for them to co-headline the Warped Tour of that year and a couple to come as they participated in Warped Tour every year. After all the amazing success, the band began touring so much that a band member, Chris Cassie, leaves the band for it being too much for him to handle and is replaced by Zach Blair for the guitarist. After that is all situated, they played a popular event hosted by the radio station KROQ, the annual Weenie Roast. The band has now made 5 albums, now including their new album called Appeal to Reason, released on October 2008. This album unfortunately did not make the same ratings as the fourth album did, but was a great album nonetheless. This album was rated as C+ by a critic of the Entertainment Weekly. At this point in time, Rise Against announces they have begun on recording their 6th album, Endgame. Its release date was in fact on 2011. These lyrics specifically talk about real-life events. For example, there is a talk about Hurricane Katrina and a song that sings about suicide awareness for children. So far, some of other bands that Rise Against has toured with, specifically in the US tour, they were toured with a band called A Day to Remember and also with The Messengers. Their 4th, newest album, you could say, has a couple of covers. They have actually released this album on 2013 called Lost Songs of Forgotten Songs. Interscope is actually a branch of the Geffen Records, and Rise Against is a part of this record label to this day. Them and more rock bands like Papa Roach, Blink-182, and also American Rejects, and some pop artists. Finally, Rise Against is a punk, rock, hardcore punk band, and this is how they stand to this day, with a couple different band members from the beginning, which is Tim McClark, vocals, Joe Prince, bass and vocals, Brandon Barnes, drums, and Zach Blair, guitar and vocals.